On the Edge, in association with Uncensored Magazine.
We are back on the Edge. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. I'd like to thank our online stream and our members for tuning in to this second hour of Overdrive. We've had a fantastic discussion with my guest, Charlie Skelton, who's the Guardian correspondent for the Bilderberg for the last 3 years. But first, let's get to some of our listeners' text messages. I've got Dan from Leeds. He's asked, what do the Bilderbergers actually do? You said who they are, where they meet, what do they actually do? I've got Linda from Birmingham saying, is there any connection between the Bilderberg Group and Bohemian Grove? We'll get into that. And then I've got Denise again saying, are there any arms manufacturers who are represented at the Bilderberg Group? I'm sure there are. I know General Electric is one of those attendees. But let's talk to Charlie about that. Again, let's address Dan from Leeds' question. In a nutshell, what do the Bilderbergers actually do?
Well, I think the easiest answer to that is what they do and have done and are trying to keep on doing is the biggest political experiment of our time and arguably of all time, which is Europe, the European Union, this huge entity. That's what they do. They do Europe. I mean, if you look back at if you look back at their past and look at the guy Józef Retinger who set them up, you know, he in 1948 became the Secretary General of the European movement. The European movement was funded by the CIA through a body called the American Committee for a United Europe, and you have the Alan Dulles in charge of that, and the CIA there, and you have the express desire in all of these bodies around in the early 50s, late 40s, all of these bodies sprang up to try and create Europe. It was always, there's all the different acronyms, different names, but you have this direct pump of cash from the British and American military intelligence establishment to keep this, to make this thing happen.
During the Marshall Plan years.
Yeah, and it is the European movement. The European movement it predates Bilderberg, and Bilderberg is a sort of a flowering of that, and it's lots of things. There's some people argue that it's a little bit Nazi, and it's and it's
the declassified documents were declassified British documents. I believe it was last year. It was serialized in a few of the major newspapers in this country. That at the end of the Second World War, the German elite got together before Berlin fell and drew up their idea or their philosophy, their second Plan B, if it were, for a Fourth Reich, which would be a European Union. Okay, and that's mainstream news. I'm not.
Plan B for Bilderberg.
Yeah, Plan B for Bilderberg. And where does the name Bilderberg come from? Explain a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, it's just a name they've got from the first sort of, I think it was 1954 or something like that, the first kind of proper conference they held. I mean, there were a few dribs and drabs in the early 50s before that, but the first kind of like Bilderberg conference was at the Hotel Bilderberg or whatever it is in Holland. And
is it still there? Is the hotel still there?
Yeah, it is.
I wouldn't mind going there for a weekend.
It looks pretty cool.
We can have a little
lost weekend there.
A retreat of all the great minds in the alternative media can meet at the Bilderberg Hotel next year. I don't know who's going to pay for that. That's the only problem. Bilderberg, Linda from Birmingham, she wanted to know, is there any connection with Bilderberg and Bohemian Grove? My initial instinct is, yes, of course there is, because obviously some of the same people who belong to the Bohemian Grove, if you're not familiar with the Bohemian Grove, Alex Jones exposed that and made it kind of a public piece of knowledge by sneaking in and filming all these men like Henry Kissinger and the head of Sun Microsystems and the Bill Gateses of the world and the Wall Street power magnates running around shouting in the woods, burning owls.
The way that I distinguish it, though, is it's American. It's the kind of, as you say, the Wall Street skull and bonesy kind of crowd.
It's like the fraternity initiation.
Absolutely.
For older.
They go camping, and God only knows what goes on in the woods.
Yeah, who knows?
Bilderberg is much more serious than that. It's a conference. As I said before, it's the lanyards. They've got their they've got their agenda, they have speakers, keynote speakers, they have breakout groups. It's a proper 3-day serious conference.
And then feedback on the last day, feedback what they had in discussion groups and breakout groups, and feeding into the formation of a new agenda. And there's some consensus reached as well the last day on the agenda, or something or other.
They would deny that fact. But also throughout the year, the steering group meets as well, which is the Bilderberg Group website takes great pains to say this conference is the only thing that the Bilderberg Group does. It's not. The steering committee meets. You can see there's released documents that just show them meeting other times of the year.
That's where the leak about the U.S. presidential candidate Mark Rubio came out.
Right.
Was out of a steering committee meeting, I believe.
Right. So what was the question? It's a very different thing to Bohemian Grove. There's obviously overlap, but I kind of prefer talking about Bilderberg because it's when you're starting to talk about Bohemian Grove, you're talking about people dancing around a big burning owl and mock child sacrifice, and you're going, okay, look, that's a little bit off the chart. Even though it's there's photographs. I'd much prefer talking about this meeting where they just sit down and sit down like this around a big table going, la, la, la.
Well, frankly, there's a lot more information about Bilderberg available.
And it's a political event. I like talking about it as a political, as a summit. I call it, and I think people should call it a summit because that's what it is. It's a political summit, and
which should be on the public radar.
It should be on the public radar, and it's a travesty of news journalism that it's not.
A big deal's made about the military-industrial complex, about arms manufacturers. Are these types of companies represented at Bilderberg? Certainly General Electric, I have seen GE names on there, and that's one of the biggest defense contractors in the world. Also one of the biggest media owners in the world is General Electric.
Okay.
Okay, so they're a big player. Now, the military-industrial complex, the military itself is transforming. There's new technologies that have come online that they've gone beta tested in places like Iraq. I'm talking about drones, and I'm talking about drones being used for civilian control of domestic extremists or population crowd control or whatnot. I saw the factory in Arizona when I was there. It's a massive operation, and thousands of jobs, and they beta test these things overseas in places like Pakistan and Afghanistan. And then, lo and behold, you're sitting in the park and you see this thing flying over your head in America, and it's being commandeered and used by the local sheriff's department or the Department of Homeland Security. And we're not far off that in this country, in the UK.
This is so depressing. This subject is actually too depressing to talk about.
I don't want to get into the police state, but it is funny. It is funny.
In terms of the person asked about the arms companies this year in Chantilly, Virginia, if you look at it on, you might as well use a bit of CIA technology and look at it on Google Maps, and it's the Marriott Hotel is just literally surrounded by Boeing.
Oh, just
all the arms bell
dotted all around the hotel.
Yeah, Grumman or whatever it is. I can't remember.
Interesting.
But just all around are the arms companies just in a circle. So it's I would expect them to be. I mean, they're pretty much in it already. I'd expect them to be present this year.
Because they're a big driver of Bilderberg policy. Oil companies, arms manufacturers, they do drive events in the world.
Yeah, and they sort of become the same thing once you're talking about the big banks, the big investment banks, and and they're sort of the same thing.
They're the majority shareholders of all these corporations anyway.
Yeah. So
you're really talking about one.
Once you're talking about the chairman of HSBC and the Marcus Aegis, the head of Barclays and stuff.
Lockheed Martin, it's the same thing.
They're just owners and shop salesmen and etc. So the military or the American intelligence often crops up, and I was saying last year the head of the NSA, this guy General Keith Alexander, who's the head of the NSA, head of US Cybercom. It's a nice
Cybercom.
And
interesting.
So I think he gave a sort of keynote speech. Why do I think that? Maybe I just made that up. But
what has Cybercom got planned for us?
Yeah, well,
in 2013.
Well, when Cybercom, the head of the NSA, is talking to the head of Facebook and the head of Google, I just get kind of cold chills.
You don't get a warm, fuzzy feeling.
I don't get a warm... This is the thing, and I do come back to this, is the number of times I speak to people about this and they go, they're just having a meeting and, they're just trying to, they're just trying to make the world a better place. I mean, genuinely, they're just trying to, I'm going, what the chairman of Shell is? I mean, don't tell me that Shell are in this world to improve it. Anyway, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't want to get, that's...
You and your bloody conspiracy theories.
Well, the great thing about Bilderberg is in terms of conspiracy theories, it's simply not one. It's been put... it's been put in the wrong drawer.
It's conspiracy fact.
It's just a bit of history combined with a bit of politics.
Sure, by definition, it's a conspiracy. You have multiple people, multiple groups steering an agenda in private, in a clandestine manner, to achieve a certain result. That by definition is a conspiracy. But it's not a conspiracy theory, it's a conspiracy fact. And I hope that a lot of the watchers of this show, On the Edge, are conspiracy factualists. There's a big difference from theorists. So I personally don't...
I thought you were going to say conspiracy fascists.
Fascists. We've got a few of those, actually. I've got a few of those coming in on the text. But look, I'm a conspiracy fact guy. I don't believe in conspiracy theory. There's nothing more boring in the world for me than conspiracy theory. I'm interested in conspiracy fact. I like to write about these things. I like to research about these things.
I love that. The great thing about Bilderberg is there's so many documents. There's release documents, there's cabinet papers, there's memoirs.
To know Bilderberg is to know history.
Of the last 60 years, absolutely.
It's to know history.
Yeah.
So certainly I didn't hear about it in high school in America. I went to the University of California. I never heard of Bilderberg. Obviously this was in the late 80s. And what would the world be like today if in your history book curriculum, there is a chapter in world history, 20th, 21st century, 20th century, of Bilderberg for the 17-year-olds to get their teeth into before they get into university? How would the world look?
Do you know what? I'd love to... I went to the... What did I go to? There was a thing at Earl's Court about the design show at Earl's Court. And a guy there was talking about kitchens, and he said he's really pushing this. He's a guy called Johnny Gray, and he makes kitchens, and he loves kitchens, and he's now setting up a course on kitchen design at a university because he wants it to be taken up by the world of academia, and he's helped this course come into existence. I would love a university to call a course something like parapolitics or deep politics or something like that. And you'd have to go back to Plato. You have to talk about the Republic. You have to talk about how elitism works, how you have to talk about eugenics. I mean, sometimes someone like Alex Jones will just be shouting into the microphone, "It's all eugenics," and at our level, it is. But you'd have to do a bit of the British eugenics crowd who are kind of they really are fascists.
The Darwins, the Huxleys, and these sort of people.
What's the guy? I've forgotten the
Bertrand Russell.
There's a friend of Darwin. With the heads of the Eugenics Society stuff is terrifying.
Well, Harvard's got got a course called Understanding Obama.
Really?
Okay, imagine the most expensive university in America. They've now got a course called Understanding Obama. Okay, and this is what you pay, $60,000 a year in tuition to be able to take a course like that. Why not a Bilderberg course? You've got all the best minds in politics, best minds in economics. They're all there at Harvard. Why not a Bilderberg course?
Well, I think Bilderberg would be half a term or something, because it's
not a lot.
You could maybe specialise it, do a couple of weeks on it.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's fascinating, and I'm sure that people watching this do like trawling through PDFs of old documents.
And there's going to be more information this year than ever before. So if you want to book a flight to Washington, D.C., Chantilly, Virginia is just a little hop, skip, and a jump over the Chesapeake Bay, and bang, you're in Virginia. You'll be there with Alex Jones and all the rest of the Occupy Bilderbergers who are allegedly threatening to show up and crash the party this year. So that would be a nice vacation for the husband and wife if you want to go see America. Otherwise, you can follow this madcap international globalist escapade online, either at Infowars.com or here on The Edge. We might actually do a wrap-up show of the Bilderberg meeting, maybe sometime in June or July, and that would be great to talk to you, maybe show some video footage. We might get Alex Jones
Well,
on.
I might be able to Skype from my Washington jail cell.
Or from, they might let you have a Skype call from your Washington jail cell. I think so. But, you know, at the end of the day, this is serious stuff. You know, and there will be some heavy-handed police tactics there. I'm sure there's going to be people arrested. I hope it's not Alex and his crew. But I assume with this much attention on Bilderberg that we're going to have a law enforcement presence there.
Well, I hope we have a mainstream media presence, but more important than anything else,
Yeah.
let's get some newspapers and some TV crews down there.
Yeah, let's get someone from the Telegraph,
Yeah.
who's a new watchdog paper apparently, and the Times or the
On the Edge in association with Uncensored Magazine.
We are back on the edge. I'm your host, Patrick Henningsen. I'd like to thank our online stream and our members for tuning in to this second hour of Overdrive. We've had a fantastic discussion with my guest, Charlie Skelton, who's the Guardian correspondent for the Bilderberg for the last 3 years. But first, let's get to some of our listeners' text messages. I've got Dan from Leeds. He's asked, what do the Bilderbergers actually do? You said who they are, where they meet, what do they actually do? I've got Linda from Birmingham saying, is there any connection between the Bilderberg Group and Bohemian Grove? We'll get into that. And then I've got Denise again saying, are there any arms manufacturers who are represented at the Bilderberg Group? I'm sure there are. I know General Electric is one of those attendees. But let's talk.
On the Edge in association with Uncensored Magazine.